the Forgotten Architects. The Kryn Dominion stretched across 15 star systems like a vast shadow in the galaxy. For 8,000 years, their empire had grown, consuming worlds and bending civilizations to their will. Their ships were legends whispered in spaceports across 100 planets. Their warriors were feared from the core worlds to the frontier colonies. Their technology was considered unmatched, and their pride was absolute. Supreme War Marshal Vexor stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Crimson Talon. He was massive even by Kryn standards, standing nearly 8 feet tall with dark purple skin that seemed to absorb light. His 4 arms were crossed behind his back as he gazed at the tactical display floating before him. Across the holographic map, 4,500 warships appeared as glowing red dots, arranged in perfect military formations. This was the full might of the Kryn Dominion, and it belonged to him. His second-in-command, Submarshal Thrain, approached with cautious steps. Thrain was younger, barely 300 years old, with lighter purple skin and only 3 battle scars across his face. He carried a data tablet that pulsed with urgent information. Marshal Vexor, the surveillance probes have confirmed the reports, Thrain said, his voice steady despite the tension in his body. The humans have established 12 new colonies in the Outer Veil sectors. They are mining asteroids, building stations, and expanding at an alarming rate. Vexor turned slowly, his 6 eyes focusing on Thrain with an intensity that made the younger officer take a half-step backward. Alarming? Vexor's voice was deep and resonant, like thunder rolling across mountains. These humans have existed in space for barely 4 centuries. They are children playing with toys they do not understand. What about them could possibly alarm the Kryn Dominion? It is their rate of expansion, Marshal. In the past 50 years alone, they have doubled their territory. Their population grows exponentially. Their industrial capacity rivals our own. If we do not act now, in another century they may actually pose a genuine threat. Vexor was silent for a long moment. He walked to the massive viewport that dominated the forward section of the command deck. Beyond the transparent alloy, stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the humans had built their civilization. They were organic creatures, soft and weak, without the natural armor or strength of the Kryn. They lived short lives, barely a century for most of them. They seemed insignificant. But Vexor had not survived 3 centuries of warfare by underestimating his enemies. Send a message to the Dominion Council, Vexor said finally. Tell them I recommend immediate military action. The human expansion must be stopped before it truly begins. We will demonstrate the cost of defying Kryn sovereignty. Thrain bowed his head. The Council will approve, Marshal. They always do when you recommend action. Then prepare the fleet. We move in 10 cycles. And Thrain, make certain every captain understands this is not merely a punitive expedition. This is a lesson that will echo across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. When we are finished, no species will dare to expand without first asking permission from the Kryn Dominion. The Council's approval came swiftly, as expected. Within days, the greatest war fleet ever assembled by the Kryn Dominion began its journey toward human space. 4,500 warships, each one a masterpiece of destructive power, moved as one vast armada through the darkness between stars. Their destination was Earth, and their purpose was annihilation. Far away, on that small blue planet, Captain Chen Wei sat in his modest apartment in Shanghai, watching the evening news. He was 62 years old, with gray threading through his black hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades making difficult decisions. 20 years ago, he had retired from the Earth Defense Force with the rank of captain. He had served honorably, defending humanity's early colonies from pirates and raiders. Now he spent his days teaching military history at the academy and tending to his small garden on the balcony. The news was discussing the usual topics. Trade negotiations with the Palaxian Federation. New colony ships departing for the frontier. Economic reports. Nothing that caught Chen Wei's attention. He was about to turn off the display when his personal communicator chimed with an urgent priority code. Chen Wei frowned. He had not received an urgent military communication in 2 decades. He accepted the call, and the face of Director Sarah Martinez appeared on his screen. She was in her 50s, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. Chen Wei recognized her immediately. She ran the Aurora Defense Initiative, the most secretive branch of Earth's military intelligence. Captain Chen, she said without preamble. I need you to come to Facility 7 immediately. This is not a request. Director Martinez, I've been retired for 20 years. Whatever this is, surely you have active officers who can help you. This concerns your family, Captain. Your grandmother specifically. Please, trust me when I say this cannot wait. A shuttle is already on its way to your location. The call ended before Chen Wei could respond. He sat in stunned silence for a moment. His grandmother, Dr. Chen Lihua, was 95 years old and living in a comfortable retirement home in Beijing. She had been an engineer and businesswoman in her younger days, but that was ancient history. What could she possibly have to do with military intelligence? The shuttle arrived 30 minutes later. It was unmarked and operated by pilots who did not speak during the entire flight. They took Chen Wei to a location he had never seen before, a massive underground facility hidden beneath what appeared to be an ordinary research campus. Armed guards checked his identity 3 times before allowing him to proceed deeper into the complex. Director Martinez met him in a conference room that was shielded against all forms of surveillance. With her was another person Chen Wei recognized instantly. His own grandson, Lieutenant Chen Jun, wearing his Earth Defense Force uniform. The young man was only 28, a systems specialist assigned to the orbital defense platforms. "Grandfather," Chen Jun said, standing at attention. "I was summoned here 2 hours ago. They wouldn't tell me why." "Sit down, both of you," Martinez said. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images of massive warships appeared, rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. "These are Kryn Dominion warships. Does either of you recognize them?" Chen Wei studied the vessels carefully. They were impressive, with sleek hulls covered in weapon emplacements and thick armor plating. "I've seen intelligence reports on Kryn military assets. These appear to match their standard destroyer and cruiser classes." "Correct. The Kryn have 4,500 of these ships. They represent the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy. 3 days ago, the Kryn Dominion formally declared war on humanity. Their fleet is currently en route to our territory. They will arrive in approximately 18 days. Chen Jun's face went pale. 4,500 ships? "Director, our entire defense fleet numbers 250 vessels. We cannot possibly stand against those odds." "Under normal circumstances, you would be correct, Lieutenant." Martinez touched a control, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed technical specifications, internal schematics, and design documents. "However, these are not normal circumstances. What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Only 17 people in the entire government know this truth." She paused, meeting Chen Wei's eyes directly. "Captain, your grandmother built every single one of these ships." The words seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Chen Wei stared at Martinez, certain he had misheard. "That's impossible. My grandmother was an engineer, yes, but she never worked on military contracts. She ran a private corporation that built civilian transport ships. That was her public business. Her real business was something entirely different." Martinez pulled up new documents. 70 years ago, your grandmother founded a company called Stellar Forge Corporation. The public front built cargo haulers and passenger vessels. But in secret, Stellar Forge accepted contracts from parties who wished to remain anonymous. Over a period of 25 years, Stellar Forge built 4,500 advanced warships. The most sophisticated military vessels humanity had ever produced. Who were the buyers? Chen Jun asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The contracts were arranged through multiple intermediaries. The payments came in the form of rare materials and precious metals that could not be traced. Your grandmother suspected the buyers were not human, but she never confirmed their identity. She built the ships according to the specifications provided, delivered them to designated coordinates in deep space, and watched them disappear into the unknown. Chen Wei felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. "You're telling me the Kryn Empire's entire military power came from my grandmother's factories? That cannot be true. Why would she build warships for aliens? Why would she keep it secret? Because she was offered payment that would fund humanity's expansion for generations. Because the contracts were legal under the loose regulations of that era. And because, Captain, your grandmother was a very careful woman. She suspected the ships might one day be used against humanity. So she took precautions." Martinez pulled up another set of documents, these ones heavily encrypted. Dr. Chen Lihua embedded fail-safe protocols into every ship she built. Hidden deep within the core systems, beneath layers of code and hardware that would take decades to discover, she placed override commands. Commands that only she knows. Commands that can shut down every system on those ships with a single transmission. Chen Jun leaned forward, his engineering mind already racing ahead. "That's extraordinary. To hide something that deep, that completely, and have it remain undiscovered for 70 years. The level of sophistication required is beyond anything I've ever seen. Your great-grandmother was perhaps the most brilliant engineer of her generation," Martinez said. "And now we need her expertise. We need those failsafe codes. Because in 18 days, the Kryn Dominion will arrive with an overwhelming force, and if we cannot level the playing field, humanity faces extinction. Chen Wei stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Where is she? Where is my grandmother? She's been brought here to the facility. She's waiting in a secure medical suite. Captain, I must warn you, she is 95 years old and her health is fragile. But her mind is still sharp. She has been expecting this day for 7 decades. They walked through pristine corridors lit by soft blue lighting. Guards stood at every intersection. Eventually, they reached a comfortable suite that looked more like a luxury apartment than a military facility. Dr. Chen Lihua sat in a cushioned chair by a large viewscreen showing images of Earth from orbit. She was tiny and frail, her white hair pulled back in a neat bun. But when she turned to face her visitors, her eyes were bright and alert. Wei, she said, her voice thin but steady. And young June. I wondered when they would finally bring you to me. Chen Wei crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking her weathered hand in his. Grandmother, is it true? Did you really build the Kryn warships? Every single one. She smiled, and for a moment Chen Wei could see the fierce intelligence that had driven her to build an empire. 4,500 vessels over 25 years. It was the greatest engineering project in human history, and I could never tell anyone about it. Not even my own family. But why? Why build weapons for aliens who might use them against us? Because I knew humanity would need the resources those contracts provided. Because I believed we could use the knowledge gained to build our own defenses. And because, my dear grandson, I am not a fool. I knew there was a chance those ships would return to threaten us. So I made certain they would never be used successfully against humanity. Dr. Chen Lihua reached into her pocket and withdrew a small quantum data core, no larger than her thumb. It glowed with a soft golden light. This contains the master override codes for every ship I built. With this, we can shut down the entire Kryn warfleet. Their weapons, their engines, their life support, everything. In an instant, 4,500 warships become nothing more than floating metal coffins. Chen Jun stared at the tiny device. How did you hide it so deeply? Their engineers must have examined those ships thousands of times over 70 years. I embedded the protocols in the quantum substrate itself, woven into the fundamental architecture of their power systems. To find it, they would need to completely disassemble the quantum cores, which would destroy the ships. And even if they found it, they would need the encryption keys, which exist only here. She tapped the data core gently. Martinez stepped forward. Dr. Chen, we need your help. The Kryn will be here in 18 days. We need to prepare a strategy that will allow us to use those failsafes effectively. The old woman nodded slowly. I have been preparing for this moment for 70 years, Director. I will help you. But understand this, what we are about to do will change the galaxy forever. When the Kryn learn that humans built their entire military might, when other civilizations discover that we have been the hidden architects of their power, everything will change. We will no longer be seen as a young species stumbling toward the stars. We will be seen as puppet masters who have shaped galactic civilization from the shadows. Is that such a bad thing? Chen Wei asked. His grandmother looked at him with ancient eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. That depends, my dear Wei, on what we choose to do with the power we are about to reveal. But one thing is certain. After this, humanity will never be underestimated again. Outside the facility, night was falling over Earth. In 18 days, the Kryn Dominion would arrive with their vast armada, confident in their overwhelming superiority, completely unaware that they were flying to their doom in ships built by the very people they intended to destroy. And in a secure underground facility, 3 generations of the Chen family prepared to turn the tide of galactic history with nothing more than an old woman's foresight and a quantum data core small enough to hold in one hand. The war was coming. But humanity was ready. The reckoning. The Kryn Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metallic locusts blotting out the stars. 4,500 warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of Earth's sun. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of turning planets into molten slag. Together, they represented 8,000 years of military dominance, the accumulated might of an empire that had never known defeat. Supreme War Marshal Vexor stood on the command deck of the Crimson Talon, his 6 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The small blue planet called Earth hung in the distance, seemingly defenseless and pathetically vulnerable. Surrounding it were the pitiful remnants of humanity's defense fleet. 250 ships, most of them outdated frigates and destroyers. It was like comparing a pride of hunting cats to a nest of insects. They dare to position themselves between us and their homeworld, Submarshal Thrain observed, unable to keep the contempt from his voice. Do they truly believe those toys can stop us? Vexor's expression was unreadable. Send the standard ultimatum. Give them one final chance to surrender with dignity. It makes no difference to the outcome, but protocol must be observed. The message was broadcast across all frequencies, translated into every human language. Vexor's voice boomed through speakers on every ship, every station, every settlement throughout human space. People of Earth, this is Supreme War Marshal Vexor of the Kryn Dominion. You have expanded into territories that belong to us. You have ignored our warnings. You have shown disrespect to an empire that ruled the stars before your species learned to make fire. You have one option and one option only. Complete and immediate surrender. Dismantle your colonies. Abandon your claims to the Outer Veil. Submit to Kryn authority. You have 12 of your hours to comply. If you refuse, we will reduce your civilization to ashes and scatter those ashes across the void. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Throughout human space, billions of people heard those words and felt ice in their veins. Parents held their children. Lovers embraced. Prayers were whispered in 1,000 languages. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone understood that humanity faced its darkest hour. But on Earth, in the underground facility that housed the Aurora Defense Initiative, Director Sarah Martinez watched the Kryn ultimatum with cold calculation. Around her, the command center buzzed with controlled activity. Officers monitored displays, technicians calibrated systems, and strategic analysts ran simulation after simulation. At the center of it all stood 3 people who would determine humanity's fate. Captain Chenwei, dressed now in the uniform he had not worn in 20 years, studied the tactical display with the eyes of a veteran warrior. Beside him, Lieutenant Chen Jun worked at a sophisticated computer terminal, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. And seated in a specially designed chair that supported her frail body, Dr. Chen Lihua watched everything with the patient wisdom of someone who had planned for this moment for 7 decades. Admiral Torres is positioning our fleet in defensive formation Delta 7, Martinez reported, referring to the commander of Earth's defense force. He's preparing to engage the Kryn vanguard if they advance. He doesn't know about the failsafes yet. As far as he's concerned, we're preparing for a last stand. That's good, Dr. Chen Lihua said softly. The Kryn will be monitoring all our communications. They must believe we are genuinely preparing to fight. If they suspect deception, they may hold back their main fleet, and we need all their ships in range for the override to work effectively. Chenwei looked at his grandmother with concern. Are you certain you can do this? The strain of coordinating such a massive transmission. I have been maintaining and updating the override protocols for 70 years, Wei. Every ship the Kryn added to their fleet from other sources, I tracked. Every modification they made to my original designs, I studied. I know those vessels better than their own engineers do. The protocols are ready. The encryption is unbreakable. All we need is the right moment. Chen Jun looked up from his terminal. Grandfather, I've established a secure quantum link to the diplomatic vessel Phoenix Rising. Captain Helena Ramos is standing by. She's ready to carry you to the parley whenever we give the word. Then it's time. Chenwei straightened his uniform and turned to face Martinez. Director, request a diplomatic meeting with Vexor. Tell him we wish to discuss terms of surrender. His arrogance will not allow him to refuse. He will want to see us humiliated in person. Martinez nodded and opened a priority channel. Within minutes, the response came back. Vexor had agreed to receive a human delegation aboard his flagship. He granted them safe passage and 12 hours to present their surrender. The contempt in his voice was evident even through the translation software. The Phoenix Rising was a beautiful ship, sleek and white with graceful lines that spoke of speed rather than war. It was unarmed, bearing the universal symbols of diplomatic immunity. Captain Helena Ramos, a steady woman with iron-gray hair and calm eyes, piloted the vessel personally. Chenwei sat in the passenger compartment, reviewing the data one final time. Chen Jun sat beside him, monitoring the quantum link to Dr. Chen Lihua back on Earth. Grandfather, Chen Jun said quietly as they approached the massive Kryn fleet. Are you frightened? Chenwei considered the question. Terrified. But your great-grandmother taught me something important when I was young. She said that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what must be done despite the fear. Today, we do what must be done. The Crimson Talon was a monster of a ship, 5 kilometers long and bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a continent. As the Phoenix Rising approached, docking clamps extended like the jaws of some mechanical predator. The small diplomatic vessel was pulled into the belly of the beast. Chenwei and Chen Jun stepped out into a corridor that seemed designed to intimidate. Everything was oversized, built for beings much larger than humans. Armed Kryn warriors lined the walls, their forearms holding weapons that hummed with barely restrained power. They were escorted to the command deck, a vast chamber dominated by tactical displays and command stations. At the center, on a raised platform, Supreme War Marshal Vexor waited. He was even more imposing in person than Chen Wei had expected. His dark purple skin seemed to absorb the light. His 6 eyes regarded the humans with the kind of casual disdain one might show insects. "So these are humans," Vexor said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "I expected you to send your leaders. Instead, you send an old soldier and a child. Is this how little you value your own survival?" Chen Wei stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated by the alien's size or presence. "I am Captain Chen Wei of the Earth Defense Force. This is Lieutenant Chen Jun, Systems Specialist. We are here to discuss the terms of this conflict." "There are no terms to discuss. There is only surrender or annihilation. Which do you choose?" "Before I answer that, Marshal Vexor, I must ask you a question. A very important question. Do you know where your ships came from?" Vexor's eyes narrowed slightly. "What manner of foolish question is this? Our ships are Kryn ships, built in Kryn shipyards by Kryn engineers. They are the product of 8,000 years of imperial innovation." "Are you certain of that?" "Absolutely certain." "I do not appreciate your tone, human. State your business or I will have you thrown out an airlock." Chen Wei remained calm. 70 years ago, a company called Stellar Forge Corporation received a series of contracts to build advanced warships. The buyers remained anonymous, using intermediaries and untraceable payment methods. Over 25 years, this company built 4,500 vessels. The most sophisticated warships humanity had ever produced at that time. Those ships were delivered to coordinates in deep space and disappeared into the unknown. Submarshal Thrain laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command deck. "You expect us to believe that humans built our fleet? This is a pathetic lie told by a desperate species." "Is it?" Chen Wei gestured to Chen Jun, who activated a holographic projector. Technical specifications appeared in the air between them and the Kryn commanders. "These are the original design documents. Hull configuration, weapon placement, shield harmonics, quantum core architecture. Every specification matches your vessels exactly. The design language is human. The engineering principles are human. Even the serial numbers, if you know where to look, are human." Vexor stared at the schematics. His expression shifted from contempt to confusion. "This proves nothing. These could be fabrications created to delay your inevitable destruction. Then perhaps this will convince you." Chen Wei opened another channel. A holographic image appeared, showing an elderly human woman seated in a comfortable chair. Dr. Chen Lihua looked small and frail, but her eyes were sharp as broken glass. "Good evening, Marshal Vexor," she said in perfect Kryn dialect, her pronunciation flawless. "My name is Dr. Chen Lihua. 70 years ago, I founded Stellar Forge Corporation. Over 25 years, my teams and I designed and built 4,500 warships. We sold them to anonymous buyers for payment in rare materials. I always suspected those buyers were not human. I always feared they might one day threaten my people. So I took precautions." Vexor leaned forward, his massive form tense. "What kind of precautions?" "The kind that a careful engineer always takes. You see, Marshal, I did not simply build your ships. I created them from the quantum level up. Every power system, every weapons array, every life support mechanism, everything runs on architecture that I designed. And deep within that architecture, buried beneath layers of code and hardware that your engineers would take decades to find, I placed something special." Dr. Chen Lihua held up the small quantum data core, letting it catch the light. "This contains override protocols for every ship I built. Master codes that can shut down any system on any vessel. With a single transmission, Marshal, I can turn your entire fleet into floating debris." The command deck fell absolutely silent. Vexor stared at the tiny device in the old woman's hand. Around him, his officers exchanged glances of growing alarm. Thrain moved to a secondary console and began frantically accessing the ship's deep system files. "Marshal," Thrain said, his voice shaking. "I am detecting, there are code structures in our quantum cores that do not match Kryn design principles. They are ancient, dating back to the original construction. They are hidden beneath our security protocols, woven into the fundamental power distribution systems. I cannot determine their purpose without initiating a full shutdown sequence, which would leave us vulnerable." Vexor's 6 eyes fixed on Dr. Chen Lihua with an intensity that would have terrified most beings. "You are bluffing. You cannot possibly control our ships remotely. Our security is impenetrable." "Is it?" The old woman smiled gently. "Tell me, Marshal, what is the quantum resonance frequency of your primary power core?" Vexor glanced at Thrain, who checked his console. 47.3 MHz in the delta spectrum. "Incorrect," Dr. Chen Lihua said pleasantly. "That is the frequency your instruments report. The actual resonance frequency is 47.333 MHz, a difference your sensors cannot detect due to a harmonic masking algorithm I embedded 70 years ago. The discrepancy allows for a quantum entanglement backdoor that exists in every ship I built. Shall I prove it to you, Marshal? Shall I shut down your flagship's weapon systems for exactly 10 seconds? That is impossible, Vexor began. Dr. Chenlihua pressed a button on her console. Throughout the Crimson Talon, weapon arrays powered down. Tactical displays showed red warning indicators as primary cannons, missile batteries, and energy projectors all went dark simultaneously. Alarm klaxons began to wail. Officers shouted in panic. Thrain worked frantically at his controls, trying to restore power. Exactly 10 seconds later, the weapons came back online. The alarms fell silent. The tactical displays returned to normal. The message was clear. Vexor stood frozen, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. For the first time in 3 centuries of warfare, he felt true fear. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Chen Wei stepped forward. "We want peace, Marshal. We want you to turn your fleet around and return to Kryn space. We want an immediate end to hostilities. We want formal recognition of human territorial claims. And we want you to understand, once and for all, that humanity is not weak. We are not defenseless. We are the people who built the tools that gave you an empire. And if I refuse?" Dr. Chenlihua's expression hardened. "Then, Marshal, I will activate the full override protocols. Every ship I built, all 4,000 of them, will shut down completely. Weapons, engines, shields, life support, everything. Your crews will have approximately 6 hours of emergency oxygen before they begin to suffocate. Your empire will lose 89% of its military power in an instant. The Norks Confederacy, your greatest rival, will invade within days. The Kryn Dominion will collapse within a year. 8,000 years of history, gone because you could not control your pride." Vexor looked around his command deck. At his officers, at his warriors, at the displays showing his mighty fleet. 4,500 warships, the product of centuries of conquest, all of them betraying him with their very existence. He had come here to crush humanity, to demonstrate Kryn supremacy. Instead, he had discovered that his empire's power had been built on human ingenuity. "You have won," Vexor said finally, the words bitter as poison. "I will order the fleet to withdraw. I will recommend to the Dominion Council that peace negotiations begin immediately. But answer me one question, Dr. Chen. Why did you sell us these ships if you knew we might use them against you?" The old woman was quiet for a moment. "Because 70 years ago, humanity needed the resources to expand. We needed materials we could not mine, technologies we could not develop on our own. Your payment funded our growth. It bought us time. And most importantly, it taught us that in this galaxy, power does not come from conquest. It comes from being indispensable. You thought you were buying weapons, Marshal. What you were really buying was dependency. And now the entire galaxy will know," Chen Jun added quietly. "We've been monitoring the quantum communications. 17 other civilizations were watching this confrontation. The news is already spreading. Everyone is checking their own ships, discovering human serial numbers and design signatures. They are learning that for 2 centuries, humanity has been the hidden architect of galactic military power." Vexor understood then. This was not just about one war or one empire. This was about reshaping the fundamental power structure of the entire sector. Humanity had been building ships for everyone, selling to all sides, maintaining careful neutrality while quietly becoming essential to every major civilization. And now that secret was revealed, humans would no longer be seen as a young, weak species to be bullied. They would be seen as kingmakers. "Go," Vexor said to Chen Wei and Chen Jun, "return to your planet. I will keep my word. But know this, human. We will never forget what happened here today. The Kryn have long memories." "So do we, Marshal," Chen Wei replied. "So do we." The Phoenix Rising detached from the Crimson Talon and began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, the massive Kryn fleet slowly, reluctantly, began to turn away. 4,500 warships, once instruments of terror, now revealed as products of human manufacturing. Within hours, the Kryn Dominion would begin its withdrawal from human space. Within days, ambassadors would arrive to negotiate formal peace terms. But the real changes were happening across the galaxy. On a dozen worlds, military engineers were examining their vessels with new eyes, finding hidden signatures that proved human origin. In councils and parliaments, leaders were reassessing their relationships with humanity. Trade agreements were being drafted. Defense contracts were being proposed. Everyone wanted to be on good terms with the species that controlled the means of military production. On Earth, celebrations erupted as news of the Kryn withdrawal spread. Billions of people who had been preparing for extinction now rejoiced at their unexpected salvation. In the underground facility, Director Martinez oversaw the coordination of diplomatic responses from nearly 30 different civilizations, all of them suddenly very interested in establishing closer ties with humanity. In her private suite, Dr. Chen Lihua sat in her chair, exhausted but satisfied. Chen Wei and Chen Jun had returned safely. The immediate threat had passed. Her 70-year-old gambit had succeeded beyond her wildest hopes. But she was old, and she could feel time catching up with her. June, she said softly, beckoning her great-grandson closer. Come here, child. Chen Jun knelt beside her chair. Great-grandmother, you did it. You saved us all. I bought us time, nothing more. The galaxy is changing, June. Humanity will face new challenges, new threats. And when I am gone, someone must know the full truth. Someone must carry the responsibility I have borne for 70 years. She pressed the quantum data core into his hands. It was warm to the touch, humming with barely perceptible vibrations. This contains more than just override codes for the Kryn ships. It contains master protocols for every vessel Stellar Forge ever built. 207 civilizations. 12,000 ships. Some are military, some are civilian, but all of them have the fail-safe protocols embedded in their quantum cores. Chen Jun stared at the tiny device with a mixture of awe and terror. Great-grandmother, this is too much power for one person to hold. Yes, it is. But someone must hold it. Someone must be the guardian. That burden now falls to you. Use it wisely. Use it only when humanity's survival is at stake. And June, remember this. She placed her weathered hand over his. Power does not come from the ability to destroy. It comes from the wisdom to restrain yourself. We could rule the galaxy if we wanted. We could hold every civilization hostage with the ships we built. But that would make us tyrants, and tyrants always fall. Instead, we remain the builders. The helpers. The indispensable partners. That is how humanity will endure. Chen Jun nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what he was accepting. I will honor your legacy, great-grandmother. I promise. Dr. Chen Lihua smiled and closed her eyes. She was tired, so very tired. But she could rest now. She had done what she set out to do 70 years ago. She had protected her people. She had ensured humanity's future. And she had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo through the ages. Never underestimate those who build the tools of power. Never go to war with weapons you do not truly understand. And never, ever, threaten the people who crafted your strength. Outside, dawn was breaking over Earth. A new day was beginning, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The old order was crumbling. A new order was emerging, one where humans were no longer the newcomers or the underdogs. They were the architects. The craftsmen. The hidden power behind 100 thrones. And across the stars, in shipyards on Mars and orbital facilities around Jupiter and construction platforms in deep space, human engineers continued their work. Building ships. Selling to all who could pay. Maintaining careful neutrality. Embedding careful safeguards. Preparing for a future that only they could see coming. The Kryn had learned their lesson. Soon, others would learn it too. And humanity, patient and clever and endlessly innovative, would continue building the tools that shaped civilizations, one ship at a time. The war was over before it began. But the real story, the story of how humans became the galaxy's most indispensable species, was only just beginning.